Imagine you book a hair appointment with a new stylist. You come in for your hair appointment, you sit down in her chair. She's a lovely woman. She puts her hands on top of your head, and you know how hairstylists do. So what are we in here for today? A cut, a color, and she's, moving your hair around your face. She's moving your hair on top of your head to get a sense of the texture and how your scalp health is doing, as well as your hair. Your appointment proceeds, you get your hair washed, blow dried, and she says to you, there's a spot on your head, on your scalp. Have you ever had that checked out by a dermatologist? And you say, there's a spot on my head? What kind of spot? And she says, well, it's a little dark, it's a little large, it just, looks out of place on your scalp. Have you had it checked by a dermatologist? And you say, no. You think that's something I need to have looked at? And she says, yes, you need to have that looked at. And she proceeds to tell you about her father and her brother who both died of melanoma skin cancer, and how it is now her mission, her calling from God, to tell people that they might need to get some stuff looked on their scalp by a professional dermatologist. How would you react? Hi, I'm Sean, Melanoma Mom here. May is Melanoma Awareness Month. It's the time where we focus and educate people about skin cancer. I found this article about this fabulous hairdresser in the Medical University of South Carolina website. That's MUSC. They are the Gamecocks. Today's story features Carol Helton. She is a hairstylist in Orangeburg, South Carolina. I am currently living in South Carolina, but I am up in the upstate of South Carolina. And she's been doing hair for 38 years. I'm going to leave the entire interview that MUSC did. I will leave it linked in the description box of this video because it has some fabulous information and some fun quotes from her. Similar to my story, Hilton found an unusual spot on her arm that she had checked out by a dermatologist who then determined it was melanoma. The spot had been there all her life, but she had noticed that it was changing. She said it got bigger, and it started rising to the surface and actually started oozing. I am so glad my melanoma never did that. So she went to a local dermatologist who did a biopsy, and it came back as melanoma skin cancer. Her dermatologist referred her to Jeffrey Sutton, MD, at MUSC Hollings Cancer Center, who specializes in melanomas. She found Dr. Sutton's presence, his bedside manner, to be very calming and reassuring during the myriad of emotions and grief and fear that she was experiencing, which Dr. Sutton says is common in any cancer patient, be it skin cancer or any other forms of cancer. And we've talked a lot about that, the emotions that come along with a cancer diagnosis on this channel. I experience them. It's something that I feel like not a lot of people know or expect. When you hear a cancer diagnosis, you don't expect the flood of emotions and grief that you experience. As part of her treatment, Dr. Sutton signed her up for a clinical trial to go along with her wide local excision. Now, if you don't know what a wide local excision is basically they take a perimeter around, I'm gonna pop up a picture of my arm, of the shape that my surgeon drew on my arm. So they start with a circle. If your melanoma is less than 1 millimeter deep, they cut out a 1 centimeter radius around the tumor site. But melanomas that are 2 millimeters or more deep, they cut a 2 centimeter radius. Now, the clinical trial that Ms. Helton was signed up for is looking to see how much do we cut off for those patients who are between the melanomas that are 1 millimeter and the 2 millimeters. So how much? Some surgeons will cut less, some surgeons will cut more. The clinical trial, as described in this article, takes groups of patients and more is cut off or less is cut off to see if they can get away with taking less skin and less muscle and skin tissue out of the patient to reduce the size of the scar. Because as you'll see in this picture here, it's a circle, but it's hard. You can't re-sew a circle back. So they have to cut an additional football shape around so that it makes it easier to pull the skin and then sew it or staple it back together. That's why, if you'll notice here, I have a dip. Let's see if I can show it to you here. I don't know if you can see. It makes me look like I have muscles in this arm. But it's yeah, you can see sort of with the black background. It's a dip in my arm because I've permanently lost that tissue that they took out. And my scar has healed up very nicely. If you go back and watch, I'll link some videos of my scar down below after it was sewn up. It's pretty gruesome. So they pick random patients to decide if they're going to be cutting less skin or more skin for this clinical trial. And Helton got the less skin option. So they were able to make her melanoma scar a lot more shallow and less skin was taken. So it'll look better on her, but she will still have a very large scar. I have to read this quote to you because it's so similar to how I feel about my scar. Helton is quoted in this article. She says, "Today's my first day wearing a short sleeve t-shirt and I'm okay with it. I've got a scar and I'm proud of that scar." It says we're a survivor. And now I'm singing Beyonce's "I'm a Survivor" in my head. But the scar, you know, I've been wearing a lot more sleeveless. Yesterday I wore a UPF 50 sleeveless jumpsuit to a luncheon with a friend and my husband. And you could see my scars. I had this big one and I have one on my other shoulder. And I could see people occasionally look over it, but it's not a big deal. I'm proud of that scar because it means I don't have cancer anymore. I just was so excited to share this story. If I knew where she worked, I would actually reach out to her and ask her some things because it's just so inspiring that she now she's a second set of eyes on the top of our scalp. We can't see the top of our scalp. Whenever I have a hard to see spot, I'm like trying to, with a camera, to take a picture, or I go and get my husband. I'm like, do you see anything? When I'm at my hairstylist, I am under a practice of asking, hey, do you see anything weird on my scalp? Because I need to know that. But I've had melanoma. Before, when I have never had skin cancer, I didn't ask those questions. I didn't even think of the top of my head, about the top of my head. For my daughter and my son, I have so many pictures in my phone because they have what are called ellipse moles. And they are round and dark brown. If I can think of it, I'll pop up a picture here. But I took my son to the dermatologist specifically because he got his head shaved short on the sides. And we noticed these ellipse moles. And I was like, oh my goodness, it's melanoma skin cancer. You know, and instantly I went to that. And I took him and the dermatologist was like, no. These are called ellipse moles. They're quite frequent. It's a genetic thing. And then my daughter has some spots on her head that might turn into those ellipse moles later on her scalp. So anything suspicious, get it checked out. I hope you were as inspired by this story of this amazing woman who has now seen her cancer diagnosis as a calling from God to be a second set of eyes for her clients. I hope you were as inspired as I have been. I'll see you in my next video.